Hey everyone, it's Trish. I wanted to do a video for you this week to talk to you more about booklets. I know some of you have experience designing multiple page documents. I know some of you have even rarely touched InDesign. So between the two of you, there is kind of a spectrum of ability. So I'm going to start out with this stuff that I want everyone to know, and then I'm going to go into a tutorial in InDesign and go step by step as to how to create the pages, how to set that up, and we'll work from there. So the first thing I want you to keep in mind is that this document is what we call an 8-page folder, also known as a booklet. The reason we call it an 8-page folder is because it's folded, 2 pages folded makes 8. Right? So you've got 2 pieces of paper, folded in half makes 8 pages. I encourage you, if you haven't tried this before, and if you haven't done it before, it's really great to make what we affectionately call a dummy or a sample, or just something for you to refer back to as you're working. I even go so far as to have this one on hand, so I'm just always looking at the pieces and the parts, what pages go where, because as you'll see as we go along, each page sort of has its place. And one that I've actually saddle stitched. Saddle stitch is essentially staples. You see I put 2 staples by hand, kind of rough approximation. The equipment that printers have are significantly better. The reason it is saddle stitch is that the equipment that processes your stuff, it actually looks like a saddle. The paper rides on it and it does the staples like that. So kind of cool little thing. You don't have to saddle stitch it. It just makes it feel more put together, literally. So just keep that in mind. Now I have a little handout. I'm going to make it digital for you, make it easier for you to read, but I want to give you some tips. So basically, you're going to follow one of 2 options, okay? So I've got the ability for you to create what we call reader spreads. So that's page 1, and then you flip it and it goes to, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then 8 being the single cover. And that's what you would do digitally. You'd save a PDF, maybe in an interactive PDF even. And you would navigate the file that way. And if you sent it out to somebody, you would do that as well. We are going to talk about next week how to do more specific things, like how would you upload that to one of the programs, like Issue, how does that work? And then the other thing we're going to talk about is printer spreads. And what that means is, what if you want to make one of these booklets for yourself at home? You can do that. As long as you have a printer that prints double-sided, pretty good, you can do this. So I'm just saying, it's one of those things that you can explore. And if you've never explored creating your own printed stuff, it really makes you a more powerful designer every time you do it, because it really makes you think in a different way than that sort of linear, page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4, or spread like. We love to draw out the spreads and design each page, but it's a different ballgame when you have it right in front of you and you can draw to your heart's content how you want to. The other thing to keep in mind with something like this is it also gives you that big, beautiful opportunity for the 4-5 spread to be something really cool. Like you print that could be a really powerful place for you to put information or something beautiful, visual, will really attract a reader. Back when we had a lot of print all the time, you would use the center spread to make posters and stuff like that. You can really do some funky things. So just keep that in mind as you go along, okay? So I'm hoping that most of you have come up with your topic and you've gathered your recipes. So the next step I'm going to take is to share my screen with you. and give you some tips on InDesign and starting that process out. So let me hook that up for us. And there we go. Okay, so that's actually a coffee bean that I have that I'm going to use, because my booklet that I'm creating for this class is I'm going to be doing the different recipes for drinking coffee or using coffee beans. I haven't figured out the title yet, but I love the idea of sharing an espresso, a macchiato, a cappuccino, a latte, an Irish coffee, maybe a Viennese coffee, a Turkish coffee. That might be a lot, but I'm gonna try, because I like that idea that I'm not making anything fancy. I'm sort of explaining and entertaining a little bit with the style. So anyhow, first thing we want to do is create a new document. So File New or Command N. You know, I'm a key command fan, so I will offer those to you as we go along. So right now, I want to set this up as like reader spreads. Okay, so a reader spread is slightly different than a printer spread. A printer spread, we would lay out the full 8.5 by 11 page like this, and we cut it down the middle. Now I'm hoping you can see this because I'm the tiny little icon right now, but basically you would lay it out 8.5 by 11 and then do a little guideline and then design each page. What we're going to do is we're going to design it this way. So basically what you're going to start with is 5.5 inches wide, 8.5 inches high. Okay, so you're just going to switch this up to 5.5, leave the height 8.5. Now, you can plug in your pages right here if you want to. Pages. You could literally plug in 12 and be done. Okay. You want, if you are going to do it this way, make sure facing pages is checked. It always is. You uncheck it if you don't want it. And in this case, I'm not worried about the margin change or bleed or anything. Columns, none of that. And I'm going to click Create. And ta-da, there it is. So some things you're going to want to keep open, at least in this particular tutorial, you definitely want to keep your pages open. Okay, Pages is one of those palettes that in this instance is pretty darn valuable because we're trying to structure how the pages are going to go. So you could go so far, and I do this all the time, is to actually go in here, and when you double click, you get the page you're on. Basically, you can navigate anything that's blue and selected. That's basically where you are. I have a small computer, so you know, in general, I try and keep all of this stuff stacked in more than what it is right now in terms of my tools, just so I can have the most space possible to view my work. If you have the ability to look at stuff on a bigger screen, do it. I highly encourage. So we know 1 is the front cover. We know 12 is the back cover. Now, oh, we don't have 12 pages. Sorry, we're gonna take out 4 pages. I was like very gung-ho at 12. Now, but this is a good learning lesson. I'm going to show you how to quickly delete pages. And also 12 is the next set of pages that you could do in a booklet. So remember, every single time you're looking at one piece of paper, this is actually 4 pages folded, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. So you could realize that if you wanted 12 pages, you need 3 pieces of paper folded, okay? You couldn't have 10. You couldn't have 11. If you had 11, you'd still have 12 pages and the back would be blank, something like that. Anyhow, let's delete these. So what you're gonna do is select 12 and select, you can actually shift click up to 9. So select 12, hold your shift key and click 9. It selects all of those, and you could drag them and drop them right into the trash. And now we are back to an 8-page folder. I think I was so obsessed with, I'm designing a magazine as well right now, and 12 is in my head. Anyhow, So you could go so far as to say this is the back cover, and you can put it on the side, you know, just off to the side of that page if it helps you. I find that sometimes it does. The center spread in particular, because again, 4-5, that's 4-5 is the center of an 8-page folder. It varies depending on the number of pages. So center spread. All right. So now we have, at the very least, we have some general, like, okay, there's your front, there's your back. Now, we're not getting super crazy with technique this week. I just want to make sure that you can get everything in that you want to get in so that you can move the parts and the pieces that you want. So the front cover might not be your beast to tackle this week. It might be getting everything else in. Now, what I can tell you is that your page 2 is likely going to be your table of contents. You typically have a table of contents either on the 2 or the 3, and with us having such few pages to work with, I think it's probably going to be on page 2, but I'm not holding you to it. And we'll do a more detailed table of contents video next week, okay? So then we're starting to get into like a recipe page. So I have gathered images and general information, basically, about coffee and how to do it. Okay, I'm going to dig in deeper later on with more content so I can help give you some guidance. But to start, I just sort of want to figure out so I have this awesome coffee idea. How do I execute it? I pulled a bunch of different images, and I gotta go grab them. So where are they? There we go. All right. So let's go with the first one, which would be, ooh, that's a nice coffee bean photo. That might be cool for the cover, actually. So we'll select that. I'm just dragging and dropping, my old school favorite technique of getting everything in quickly. I'm not a fan of doing the, file, place, whatever. It's fine for some people. I'm just not into it. So that's actually a good thing to have. These images, so I've downloaded a bunch of images, and this is a nice tip to have if you haven't used them before. Pexels.com, P-E-X-E-L-S. It's one of my favorite places to get stock photography. If I don't have time to shoot it myself, I still want good photos, and they definitely have a really great roster of people and photographers that allow great photos. So that being said, I'm not gonna pussyfoot around with that too much more. I know that I like that as a cover. So that's that. Now, for those of you that want to try this full bleed thing, it's a little bit trickier when you try and print it yourself because you need to have a bigger piece of paper, right, to trim down. The other video I'm sharing this week about booklets, she does a really great job of explaining all that. So I'm not bothering with it because I think she did a really great job. Watch the first 8 minutes of that video, blow your mind. So now I can pull in my next image, which I believe is an Americano or an espresso. So I think the first one is espresso, just because espresso is what many of the coffee drinks build upon. So we'll plug that in. And I think my primary idea here in terms of design is sort of sweet and simple. I want to give a really nice, beautiful visual. And I think I've grabbed a bunch of nice, images from Pexels that I really like. And I also sort of have an idea in terms of the style that I want to work with. So this is an espresso. And I want to say I want to use like Oswald, but let's see what I got going on here. I also have this one. I don't know if it's on this particular, yeah, it's not on this computer. Well, I haven't populated my new computer with my old computer's fonts. My old computer is a beauty and I love it. And it's got so many fonts downloaded over a ton of time. I've not updated this one in the midst of the pandemic. I got a new computer and just have been busting out stuff ever since. So the title might be something, you know, this is a pretty neat and tidy typeface. I might actually use this for the body copy. It's a little bit tight, but I feel like we could go, so here's the thing. Remember, keep in mind that on screen things look a lot smaller than they might be in real life, or the other way around. I tend to design it and then look and I'm like, oh my God, that is really big type. So display type officially starts at 12 point, just so you know, okay? Display meaning headlines, subheads, things like that. 10 and 11 point type are the standard body copy typefaces, okay? And again, that varies, obviously. Some X heights are so tiny that you really need to use a typeface very big. And then there's times when the typeface is so strong, well, you can't even use it small. But in this case, Oswald, I've used it quite a bit on one client's work where I do a lot of menu work. And this is sort of the highlight font. I think I mentioned to a lot of you in the discussion this week with your ideas, I think I mentioned a lot about making sure that you're choosing typefaces in particular that have good numbers and good glyphs. And the reason is simply that we do have measurements and things that are part of the club here. So let me see, I don't know if Oswald's character or glyphs are super awesome, but let's look. And this is pretty much how you figure it out. You will go into character, select your glyphs, and I'm gonna make them tiny so I can see what's going on. Those numbers look good. Now, ooh, look, they have them. They have a quarter, they have a half, they have 3/4. I love that, because what if you want a 1/4 cup of something? What if you need a 1/2 teaspoon? It's a pain in the butt to have to customize this as a designer. And I know a lot of you aren't quite there yet in terms of that customization, but that's the level of attention to detail that you can get to as an artist and designer, and really pay attention to the nuances of glyphs. And I'm going to push you for this on this project. I'm going to look for, are you using proper glyphs within your typeface? Or are you just plugging out 1/half? You could do 1/half, that's fine, but make sure that one is superscript, one is subscript, right? One is higher, one is lower. You set the 1 high and you set the 2 low. And how to do that, I will show you, okay? If you have a typeface that doesn't allow you a glyph like 1/4 and you need 1/4, watch this. So you select the bottom number, get the glyphs out of the way, open your character palette, and what you do is you want to subscript around the bottom. So you select these options here and you select subscript. The one you would set as superscript. And then you take all of that and go back in there and go small caps. And that should have, maybe it didn't really do the bottom one as good as I wanted. But again, this is why they design the glyphs the way that they do, because doing it custom is a pain in the butt. So because I'm a little particular, I'm going to custom this just to show you it's possible. So now what you're gonna do, you see right here, this little, you're in character palette. Here's your detail, and we're gonna click it up. Just a couple points there. We could even go so far if you really wanted to be particular. You could select the 1 and the slash and tweak that spacing right there too. And get it so that it really looks close. But again, you can see, look how nice the glyph is versus that custom one I just made. You decide. Now that you know, you can't unknow. It will be a choice that you will not do it. Okay. So anyhow, there's that. Keep that in mind. And then, you know, you are all leaning towards some sort of a fun, funky face to play with. And I love that. And that's sort of the vibe I want to go with this too. Now, again, I don't have a ton of typefaces on here. So what I have to pick from isn't exactly the most amazing. But I do like this one. This is fun. Amatic is very similar to the typeface I have that I love called French Press on my other computer. And so that might be really fun to play with. This background is pretty light colored. And so I could maybe play with it like this. A couple of the other images have darker backgrounds, so I could knock the type right out of the image, which is awesome. I'm psyched to be able to do something like that. So from here, let's see, maybe it's making espresso. And again, I want to look at what is the most important information here. So I'm making, that's really espresso. So that could go smaller. Or that could even go to my Oswald typeface. Right? And I could really bump that down. I kind of almost want it so that the G like hits just under the baseline with that other stuff. It's kind of fun. And then I could take all of that and make that smaller. I really want to make it a little more demure. And again, this is me just playing. I really want to get you guys on the computer this week. Get these things up and shown, because the details are really what make these projects shine, okay? So let's see. This could be ingredients. There's certain consistencies, right? Every page is going to have a certain consistency to it. So, you know, the first page is pretty much the most important in terms of like trying to get a structure going. Because once you get it going, it's okay to change it. You know, you've made some choices and you like the choices or you don't. So you make new choices. And so you keep what works and then you move along. And, you know, if you get stuck on something, you know, send me a note or send me a picture. I'm happy to get back to you and help you move forward. But also, it's okay to skip a page. You don't have to go in chronological order. I happen to be doing that right now just to show you the basics here. So that's all. Now, the next step here would be the actual ingredients. So we could say, now this one's kind of weird. Now, some of you do have more interesting recipe choices than just a standard recipe, okay? So you're going to have to consider what is ingredient, what is direction, okay? And then pick what goes there clearly, because you're going to find you might run out of space if you use too much information. So I think I'm going to go with, now Oswald is a fun, funky face, but it's not exactly, it doesn't have a bold version. It doesn't have its family. It just is it. It has great glyphs. So for, you know, numbers, great. But, you know, if you need to use this for a lot of body copy that requires italic and bolding and things like that, that wouldn't be the typeface for you. You might have to go to something that has a lot of variation within the type family, okay? So pay attention to that as you're doing this. And then use the knowledge that you gained in the hierarchy section, right? Use the weight of the typeface, use the size of the typeface, the amount of spacing, the leading, and the tracking, right? Use those things to your benefit. So I don't know if I'm gonna need, I think I'm probably going to need to put 2 on a page. I think. Let's see. Now, I've just been dragging and dropping images and popping them in. The other way to do this would be creating an actual spot for the picture to begin with, and then dragging and dropping the image directly into that container. The benefit to that is that you can use frame fitting. And you only really want to use these two here because these other ones mess with the proportion. You don't want that. And you definitely don't want to use auto fit because it will pull it and push it in every direction that you could possibly imagine. So here's Turkish coffee, and you can see that background is different from that one. But here's the thing. The cool thing about this is if I've done this right, if I pick the right typefaces, I should be able to take this and knock it out. Knock out means you take the type and you make it white over an image. That's all that means. Nothing crazy. But that's what that means. So if I did this right, it should still be pretty clear right there. So this one will be Turkish coffee. All right. So I feel like, yeah, that's not bad. Although, you know, I may make it a little smaller just because I don't like it over the handle. But again, this is where, you know, you have a setting and then you try something new. So there we go. I've tried it on an image in white. I've tried it on an image in black. I like that. I think that that might be what I pick. Now, again, I'm doing this based upon the glyphs I like in the typeface that I've picked, the Oswald, and I like the funkiness of this Amatic typeface. It reminds me of a typeface that I have on my other computer called French Press. So from here, you could do all sorts of different things. Now, I had a little graphic here that I pulled from Illustrator. It's just a coffee bean. But that's something that I could pepper around if I wanted. I could use that as sort of a natural separator between recipe and ingredients. There's all sorts of things I could do. I could also change its color because it came from Illustrator. And I didn't bring the file in from Illustrator. I selected the artwork, right? The line work in Illustrator, and then I pasted that into here. So I actually have editable artwork in here. So if something was messing with me, I could actually go in and make physical changes to the beans right in InDesign instead of having to pop back into Illustrator to get that to happen. I think that's a powerful thing to be able to do. And oftentimes the computer gets cranky with me when I'm using really big files or lots of vectors, but when it's a simple little thing like this, what does it matter? And now I could use that not only as in full opacity, but I could drop it and have it be a watermarked effect as well. So it's really much more subtle. So, you know, you see, there's a lot of variety available to you here. So images, type. Now, let's do a little bit more type work here. There are a few other things you're going to want to work with. And let's just get the type in the right position. There we go. You're going to want a body copy, okay? Body copy is type that is kind of the standard text block, okay? The main content. And I know this seems very small, but the reality is 10-point type is standard readable type for most average humans, okay? And it's 11-point type when you're on a computer, okay? That's why it looks so small. And that's why we all design a little bit bigger than we think, because we see it, we perceive it as being smaller than it really is. When you print 10-point type, it is readable. That being said, for both spectrums of new readers and the elderly, we keep that in mind. So 11-point type is one of my kind of go-to places for body copy. Okay, so I'm going to grab my body copy for my Turkish coffee. All right, so now these are nice little interesting points about Turkish coffee. These aren't exactly directions, so I'm doing a little bit more work on this. I'm actually rewriting them. Okay, so this is the idea of it though. This type is just heavy to me. So I'm gonna see if I can find something a little bit lighter. Scala Sans happens to be a typeface I use for one of my clients, and it's a full collection, my friends. It's got light, bold, condensed, condensed bold, italic, and it's a sans serif. I typically don't use sans serif in a body copy, but I do believe that if you want to, you can. It's not, I don't think it's hard to read. That's the rap it gets, is that it's hard to read in quantity, or it's easier to read sans serif. I think it's more important for you to have the ability to be able to pick the typeface that serves the design. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Now that means I'm up to 3 typefaces. I've got to make decisions, and to be honest with you, it doesn't matter to me if you use 3 typefaces. But if you don't have to use 3 typefaces, then don't. In my case, I can use Scala Sans. Let's see, Scala Sans, and we go maybe with one of the bolds. Try that. That's a little thick though. Do they have something slight bold? Bold. There you go. It's a different style face, right? It's a lot wider, but it definitely is bold. I don't have to use it. I don't need to use it so big, that's for sure. So let's do something like that. So you can see my style of working is that I have these in separate boxes right now. I'm trying to find my place, okay, where things are going to fit the best. Eventually, I may take and copy directions out of there and actually put it directly into the same box as the actual directions. It really is going to depend on what I like best, right? Like that actually looks kind of cool to me. If I wanted to bring it down further, I could do that. You see that there's options, and this is the thing I want you to really work on this week, is playing with your layout. Figure out what looks really good. Figure out what flows the best for the project that you've picked, okay? And then from there, ask me questions. I will make the tutorials for you this week.